Now, for the formal beginning of the show, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Cavanaugh here, your host. We're going to talk all about modern business intelligence and data experiences. We brought back Dr. Robin Bloor, the eponymous Chief Analyst for the Bloor Group. We're also going to be hearing from Elena Rowell and Josh Parenteau, both of Looker, now of course part of Google. And folks, this is a really, really hot topic. So we're talking about a metamorphosis in the business of analytics, of business intelligence, data warehousing, of course, analytics, artificial intelligence. It's all converging right now. With that, Robin, the floor is yours. Just say next slide when you're ready. Take it away.
Okay. I suppose I've themed this with astronaut pictures just because it seemed to me that we are actually dealing with a very modern thing. So I hope you enjoy the graphics. We're talking about the data experience. The thing, I guess, I like to take what you would call, overviews, high-level views of things. And one of the things that when I think about AI and BI, I figure it has 5 parts. Really, mostly it's about insight, but insight itself can divide up into foresight, hindsight, and oversight. So there are various kinds of applications. And also optimization is a thing. The interesting thing that's happened is that AI became of age in the past like 3 or 4 years, and BI continued to evolve. So when we look at things nowadays, we have to in one way or another think, if we're looking at BI, we have to bear in mind that AI exists out there and that these two things shake hands with each other. So let's go on to the next slide. If you were to talk about a complete BI platform, this, by the way, is an oversimplification beyond imagination. Never mind. There is nowadays, there's external data. Data can come from anywhere. You have staging areas, you have lots of internal data. It used to be databases. Now we have data lakes, and now we have streams coming from everywhere, internally as well as externally. So, we have a kind of confluence of data, the like of which never previously existed. All of that stuff in one way or another has to be governed, cleansed, ingested in order to serve it up. So that's the let's go and get it and make it available. And the other side is exploitation, which we can say, with the words report, analyze, and then having either reported or analyzed, do something. Otherwise, why were you doing all of that? And if you look down this list, and this I don't think is an exhaustive list either. We could have a contest to see how many words could be added. But there are alerts, reports, forecasting, dashboards, scorecards, performance management specialism, OLAP specialism, visualization, interactive visualizations, BI portals, animations, data exploration, interactive exploration, data mining, text mining, video mining, predictive analytics, real-time analytics, time series, geo-analytics, machine learning. You could have 10 subsets of machine learning for the various kinds of things you can do with that, cognitive computing, and straight software development to make stuff happen. In other words, what we can do with data now proactively outside of applications is a goddamn huge area. Now let's go on to the next slide. This is this isn't really an architecture, it's a kind of way of looking at things, but we have in the top left-hand corner, you have the operational applications that run the business. And you have in the top right-hand corner, you have the office applications that run the people and help to run the business. And then you have workflow between those things, and let's just take a whole segment of things and call it analytics applications on the one side and BI applications on the other side. And then you have, of course, all the data that needs to flow into all of this. So it's data flow management, which can feed either analytics or BI applications. And on the left-hand side, you have the things that we think of in various ways as AI. And on the right-hand side, we have a shorter list of things that we can think of as BI. And that's kind of the corporate reality in the sense that the analytics applications normally have a separate architecture to the BI applications, but the data flow that's carrying data to them will normally be held in common. And the links between operational applications and office applications, those things tend to go in both directions, both from and to. So that's kind of where we are. I mean, this is, again, it's just a huge generalization, but that's what corporation looks like. We can make it more complicated by throwing clouds into the mix and saying, well, some of this bit's in the cloud and some of that bit. And, you know, we could say there are various kind of accelerations going on and various kind of data caching going on and so on and so forth, which complicates the picture. But, you know, as a rough overview, that's not bad. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, if we're looking at BI specifically, I would say that, you know, there has been a very obvious BI evolution. And it's a bit difficult because when I'm mentioning products here, for instance, when you mention products, of course, they all move. And in one way or another, they try and take in things that appeared later. But I remember when it was called decision report, and it's pretty much all reporting. And there wasn't, you know, there wasn't anything but lists of stuff and calculations. You know, I am that old. Then you got enhanced reporting with graphical capabilities, and this was, you know, when the personal computers actually made an impact, and people therefore had a screen of their own. And you got products like Cognos, like information builders, and so on and so forth. And they were initially reporting products. They came in enhanced reporting products. Then you got the whole thing, drill down, OLAP and drill down was kind of a thing unto itself. It goes back a long way, sometime in the 90s. And they got very excited about OLAP because you could actively, you know, the user suddenly became active. They weren't passively just catching stuff. They suddenly became active and you could go and explore the data in one way or another. And you had companies like MicroStrategy grew up at that particular point in time. And you could say they, for a period of time, they dominated the space. What was actually happening in the background was something that was more revolutionary, I think, than people ever realized. And I came across this, you know, even in the late 80s, where people had picked up spreadsheets, Excel in particular, and they were doing a kind of self-service BI. And they would often be doing it in groups of 3 or 4, or in departments, not telling the IT department that they were doing it. Sometimes they'd be collecting their own data. They were doing things that, you know, to be honest, one should have disapproved of. But Excel gave that capability, and it created within the individual, they started to call themselves knowledge workers, which I think is fine, this desire to serve themselves, because they kind of knew some of the things that they wanted to do. And I think personally that ClickView and Tableau emerged out of the enthusiasm for Excel, because Excel had never architected itself to be any kind of BI tool. It was, you know, a jack of all trades kind of piece of software. And Click and Tableau started to do the enhanced self-service game. And they, you know, they started off being able, it was like a desktop application that suddenly became an architecture underneath that could have the data flowing from wherever you wanted it to. So they became more sophisticated, and then they morphed into dashboards, and others joined them like Sisense. And then, you know, on top of this, I would say that the next layer that has occurred is data visualization. And I think when we talk of data visualization, I think very important to understand that the human being takes in 80–90% of its data through the eyes, and animations, the human being processes animations, devotes more, let you say, CPU power of the brain to processing animations than it does to still pictures. So I would say that with data visualization, some interesting things happening, and Looker is one of the interesting things happening, but I think there's much more to happen as time goes by. Next slide. So, you know, this is just the BI drivers. There are a lot of things, and therefore a lot of things that can be talked about, right? But there is a corporate dynamic, and that involves all of the data governance and orchestration of data. Plus, the corporate is interested in business process change. Apart from anything else, it's what I call a variable constant. It's happening all the time and it's variable. And there's business performance. Nowadays, BI, but AI is kind of, if you like, shaking hands with BI. So AI discovers something, and in one way or another, it's a new rule. It's something we found out about our data, passes it on to BI to be exploited. Or else it just, the AI is just plumbed in, and human beings never see it. Those two things are possible. You've got the technology factors that I don't think we're going to talk a lot about today, simply because if you get down into those weeds, you tend to drown, you know. But we've got software integration. Doing BI and AI is not enough on its own. You actually, in one way or another, have to integrate it with what's going on with the applications. You've got databases and data lakes. You've got cloud and the edge in terms of hardware realities. You've got data streaming. The user dynamic, I think, which is what we're going to talk about today. Personal process integration. How do I make this software work the way I work? Extreme self-service. How do I get whatever I want to wherever I want, right? And bulletproof timeliness. How do I get it all in time? And, you know, streaming if I want it. Those are the questions. And those are, if you like, drivers. So, in summary, AI and BI are evolving. The new frontier for the user is real-time data visualization and animation. For the business, it's data governance and AI and BI integration. And for technology, it's as usual, cheaper, faster, more scalable, better, you know, the cloud, whatever. And that's all I've got to say for the moment.
Now that sounds good. And I like the fact that you kind of put this in context of personal workflow, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. And as a teaser to what we hear from the folks from Looker, what they're talking about with a data experience is when some experience that your customer has is infused with data. And so it has been improved, but you don't notice it. You don't see the integration under the covers, for example. You don't see the calculations that are made. All you know is that your experience just got better. And so that's the whole concept of data experiences. And I actually took a line from my good buddy, Dave Wells, who talked years ago about how data warehousing should become what he called under the hood technology. And the point simply is that you don't need to know how your car works to know that it works or doesn't work. And you don't really need to understand the intricacies of how different component parts inside that engine actually operate. When it breaks, you take it to the mechanic and they fix it, or they don't. But the point is, you don't really need to know all of that. And what's interesting in our industry, and Robin has given you a bit of an evolution here of where we came from and where we're going, is that a lot of the focus tends to be on the speeds and feeds, the nuts and bolts, which tables can do that, so on and so forth. That's all very important stuff, but not for the business user, and certainly not for your customer or your partner, right? All they care is that things work and that they work well. And that's what we're talking about with the whole concept of a data experience. And with that, I'm going to make Elena Rowell, the presenter. Elena, I'm handing the keys to you right now. I think you need to unmute yourself. But Elena, take it away. It's all you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Robin and Eric. Exactly what you're saying, Eric, we are going to dive into this topic of data experiences and kind of blend that together with, you know, the BI modernization that is happening right now and that is critical for driving these. So I will be going over some of the more high-level stuff, and then I'm going to be passing it off to my colleague Josh to really dive into some of the technical nitty-gritty on how we get to these things. So without further ado, let's jump in. People at your organization have become more and more accustomed to getting data in their everyday lives. The line between what you expect at a professional level and what you expect at a personal level is blurring. If you think about even just like your day-to-day experience, like I ordered myself breakfast this morning as a treat for staying inside. And you know, when you open your delivery app, it says that your person is 6 minutes away and 5 minutes away. And if you think about that, all that really is data. And so people are starting to expect this more tailored, more real-time experience. And it's echoed in what we see in the market. So e-commerce growth has accelerated almost 4 to 6 years over this time of this pandemic. And we can see that businesses are expecting to be working from home, right? So people are expecting to have more data to stay connected with the businesses that they're no longer physically going into. Additionally, it's been a rough year, and the businesses we are seeing older school businesses fold, and all of that goes to say that there is an increased need for more and more data to power these better experiences. And I think Forrester said it best when they said that what these businesses do is that they're insight-driven businesses, and they're able to harness and implement these digital insights strategically and at scale to drive growth and to create differentiating experiences, products, and services. And what we're really going to focus on is this differentiating experiences. But I bring this up in context of the last slide because the businesses that are doing this are actually winning. So they're growing faster. They are growing in a more transformative way. And I think, most importantly right now, they are far more likely to succeed in the time of disruption. And so if we know that these insight-driven businesses are the ones that are winning, and we know that this is even more important, why is it that the technology we have today isn't getting us there? So I'm going to pass it over to Josh to talk about that.
All right. Thanks, Elena. Thanks everyone. So just to provide a little bit of context in terms of what we're talking about, why are we talking about data experiences? There's been a whole lot of change and evolution in the BI space since it started, 30 years ago now. The point of this slide is to sort of talk about why haven't we made fundamental changes and having a better impact and getting more adoption? Well, if you start with kind of what BI has been about forever, right? The traditional approach of centralizing all of your data in a warehouse, doing ETL to transform it, put it into a form where you can actually deliver content, dashboards and reports. That's been around forever, and there's still a lot of companies that are still doing that. Over the past, I would say, decade or so, we've seen what Robin was talking about with visualization and self-service, sort of at the other end of the spectrum. So Elena, if you advance the slide here, there's sort of another kind of way to think about this where the data discovery or visualization or self-service takes a very different path, right? There's very little governance associated with data discovery. It's all about self-service. Traditional had very little self-service, so kind of two almost opposite things going on here. But what's important to note is that they end at the same place, right? We're still delivering dashboards and reports as the metaphor for analytics to a fairly narrow subset of users in your organization. Like there's an expectation that they're going to log into a tool to access a dashboard, or they're going to be looking in their email for a PDF of a report. That is still a requirement. Like people still need that for some business processes, but that is by no means all encompassing. What's happened, despite the very fundamentally different way we've approached BI over the past several years, has been we're still leaving the frontline teams, customers, partners, people who just need to experience data and technology in a different way, really out of the mix. Next slide, Elena. So what we have given a lot of thought to, and really, as we talk with customers, really sort of thinking about, well, how do we turn that dynamic on its head, right? We've always started with data and technology, and then we've kind of ended at the user, and that's sort of where you end up, where you're only serving a pretty small percentage of your potential target audience. If we think about sort of taking a different approach, almost starting at the other end, where we say, let's really understand our users, and they can be internal users, external users, but let's really understand with a consumer-centric approach what people are trying to do. What problems are they trying to solve? What in their business processes can they have an impact on? What decisions are they making every day that we can influence? Really understand that, and that becomes your requirements, not what fields do they need from X database. It's understanding their business problems and then working backwards. So what is the best technology to deliver the solution to them, to deliver a solution to them. And like I said before, that may be a dashboard, it may be a visualization, it may be a report that gets distributed to them, but more likely than not, it's something other than that. Because the more we reach out to the fringes of an organization, the more we're going to find people who are not technically savvy. They need to access content. In Elena's example, like she didn't think about logging into a separate tool or running a query to find out how far away her driver was. It just told her. So I think the concept of just having information fed to you is kind of what we're talking about here. So as we think about data experiences, it's that. It's really how do we make information just second nature, right? We're informing decisions and the things that people do day to day. Just as part of their normal work. So to go a little bit, Elena's going to go a little bit deeper into, what are some of those experiences or options that you uncover as you start to ask questions this way, as you start to look at, what does my user need and what can we do to improve the way they run their business and make decisions. So let me turn it back to Elena to go a little deeper there.
Perfect. So the first thing to keep in mind about data experiences is this just simple construct that they are defined by the person that sees them and the person that's consuming data through them. And so, we get, I think both Eric and Josh have mentioned this phrase fees and feeds, and that we think about what we're creating, but at the end of the day, it really matters what the person at the other end of the screen is seeing and what that means to them. And so if we start to think about this idea of data experiences, it's really just the way that someone is experiencing data. It's super simple, but when you think about people using data more intelligently in their day-to-day lives, in every moment at work, it becomes a lot more complex in how you think about those delivery mechanisms, because it's really not practical for people to, log into a BI tool, even if they need a dashboard, do they even need to log into that BI tool? So as we've done more research into this phenomenon, as we've really looked at what customers were doing and what their customers needed, we put this construct around data experiences, and we kind of teased out 4 key experiences that really set the foundation for a data-driven workforce that can really, amplify your workforce with data. And so in a company, we can think of this as we have our modern BI and analytics experiences, which are, as Josh said, very important. We still need those dashboards. We still need to analyze data. But, they look a little bit different. They're very, they're dynamic dashboards that allow you for drilling and data exploration, and these deep, trusted exploration environments that allow you to do that analysis of data. Right? It's that these experiences are interactive. They are for asking questions of data, not for simply seeing a picture. The next one is this idea of integrating experiences. It's, in my delivery example, which seems to be today's theme, that I did not think of that as data, as I said, and that's kind of what we think about as this integrated experience. So, pushing it into the Slack channel where someone is already working, where they're just seeing the fact that, someone became a customer or someone churned or whatever that may be, just a fact of life, or maybe it's, embedding it where people are already working. From there, if we think about having, real-time accurate data that's, drillable and, interactive, we then think, okay, well, what can we do with this? What can we do to make this data even more impactful? And that's where data-driven workflows come in. What can we do to say that I don't just want to see this dashboard? In theory, a dashboard should really drive action. So where do I want to send this data? What do I want to change based on this data? What are the intended outcomes of using this data, and can we create data-driven workflows that really take advantage of that? And then finally, if this isn't enough, can I just build something totally custom? A data experience, actually, if you think about hotels.com, right? What is it doing? It is you are filtering data and you are surfacing it in a way that makes sense to you. That is a data experience, but it's not considered data. So this last category is kind of the the catch-all of dream big and like think about what is it that you want this data to do and what is it that you want people to have and how can we power this with data. So all of this sounds super amazing, but there has obviously been some strict limitations input by the technology that we have today. So I'm going to give it back to Josh to talk through those restrictions.
Yeah, so I mean, I think even looking at sort of the data experiences that Elena walked through, a lot of those are kind of new concepts or concepts that haven't really been thought of in terms of BI, right? BI has been largely about standard reporting and dashboarding and more recently visualization and self-service. So if you look at, well, why does my existing BI platform, why is it not the right one to move the needle on modernizing and to move the needle on, on addressing some of the newer experiences we talked about? There's really 4 reasons, right? Scalability is going to become an issue for a lot of the things that Elena walked through. They require modern databases that are performant, that are scalable, that aren't cubed or extracted, right? It has to be against live data. They're really not agile, and you need to have almost a rapid prototyping kind of mindset when you're building these experiences. And a lot of the traditional tools don't really support that iterative, collaborative development process. Limited experiences, right? They were designed to do a thing which was reporting and dashboarding, and the newer tools, the visualization tools, were designed for that, to offer self-service, visual exploration, but they really aren't designed to be sort of a one-stop shop for many different experiences to sit on top of. That's just a limitation of the tools that are out there. And then just lock-in, when it comes to choice at many different levels. Where do you deploy the software? What underlying database are you referencing? All these things that kind of provide that sort of or create a situation where you're locked in. So if you want to make changes or you want to bring in additional capabilities that maybe are provided by a technology partner product, it's really hard to do that. So flexibility, openness really aren't things that have been part of the traditional kind of paradigm. And then thinking about, well, that sort of makes sense. If you look at this slide, a lot of people, almost every company realizes that BI and data is important, right? And Gartner's done a bunch of surveys, Forrester, every analyst firm does surveys of CIOs and CEOs, and it's always at the top of the list. So, almost 100% of companies say, yeah, we know that BI is important. We know it's got to be a integral part of our strategy. And about half of those companies are actively investing in it. So, it's not like they built something 10 years ago and that's all they're doing. They're still trying to modernize. They're still trying to get value from their data. But when you look at the bottom number, how many have actually gotten to the stage where you would call them data-driven, where they've reached sort of this transformational level of maturity and every decision that they're making is informed by and driven by data? It's single digits. So there's a lot of work to do here, right, to really get to the point where we can call the decisions that we make in organizations truly data-driven. And I alluded to this earlier, but I think that I spent a number of years in the end user world. So I did a lot of the sort of logical and physical modeling on the database side, a lot of ETL work, but this was always the way projects went. We would go and ask the business users what they wanted. They didn't know, so we'd ask them, okay, what data do you need? They still didn't know, but they'd give us something. And we would go and build these complex ETL scripts. We'd extract data from, whether it's an ERP system or CRM or wherever, transform that and load it into a EDW. And, next step there is pick a technology to sit on top of that. Back, 10 plus years ago, you were looking at Cognos or Business Objects or maybe Oracle, OBI. Pretty limited choice relative to where we are now, but you, again, pick something that in theory would create a separation between all the complexity of the data and the ETL and give business users a user-friendly kind of window into that world. And then finally, people, okay, well, we built this solution, what are we going to solve with it? Right? Obviously, that's not the right approach to take, because a lot of times you end up with a solution that you really can't align to a problem, or people don't know how to use it, or it's too complex. And the cycle that everyone on this call has probably gone through is you get to the end of this long, long drawn out process, and you finally built something and you delivered it, and your user says, well, it's nice, but it's not quite right. One of the data elements is missing, or this transformation's wrong. This starts all over again, right? It's not agile, it's not iterative, it's not flexible. So that's what we were saying. We sort of led with, like, let's start with the people and have the, understand what they're really trying to do and work backwards from there. So I think this is a better visual of that, starting kind of going up the stack with people, ending at data. And then, really thinking about, well, what does it take to deliver all the new sort of innovative data experiences that Elena laid out? I think it starts with, really the kind of removing the data extract paradigm from the equation. As soon as you extract data from the source, you're increasing you're introducing latency, but you're introducing the risk of, data being inconsistent, out of sync, just wrong because you're further transforming it. So really leaving data in a performant, scalable cloud native database, I think is kind of the foundation. Really though, it's about, kind of what, if you think about what I said about the traditional tools, they did build this business abstraction layer, a semantic layer. We absolutely believe that's critical. So we have a similar construct. It's a semantic layer, but it's Git version controlled. It's collaborative. It's just a different approach, really trying to solve the same problem. But what it gives you is governed metrics. It gives you a centralized single source of truth that can be contributed to by not just one person or a small team of technical people who know the tool, but people who know data and people who know SQL. That's kind of what it takes to contribute to the data model. And then from there, because we've now got the foundation of a flexible kind of middle tier that abstracts the logic from the underlying data, it then is the base for serving the experiences that Elena talked about. So you've got, modern BI, so that allows you to do all the interactive dashboarding and self-service exploration. I'll call out that one real quickly. Self-service exploration in our thinking basically means that you are exploring trusted data. So, I'm going to give you access to data that is curated, it's trusted, and you can self-serve away. You can ask ad hoc questions, you can build your own dashboards. Self-service in, I think, the broader context kind of means, well, I can do whatever I want. So we do, we have a governed kind of trusted sort of spin on exploration. And then drilling across data sets is all sorts of things you can do sort of within that swim lane of what we're calling modern BI and analytics. And this is frankly what the market thinks of as BI. So, we think of BI as something that Looker happens to do. Like, Looker is not a, kind of a pure traditional BI platform. It's something that we do that's delivered via our platform. What other things do we do? Integrated insights. So, integration into tools that are used every day, like Slack, Dropbox, Salesforce for sales reps who are in there all day as part of their job, delivering insights and analytics to them where they are. Next, build that out, Elena. Data-driven workflows. So again, a lot of examples we see here in the market with our customers are using alerts, thresholds to automate processes, to automate decision making, where historically that might have been someone getting an alert or getting a report or getting a dashboard, seeing that something's been triggered and having to invoke action themselves. There is some examples, but I think the more intriguing ones are the ones where we can actually automate that. So you can obviously introduce efficiencies, get the people who were doing that sort of as their role to do higher value, more innovative things with data. So it's sort of a change in the workforce and how they think about data and how they manage their business processes. And then finally, custom applications. So a lot of different obviously uses and use cases here. But we see ISVs, software vendors who are building on top of the platform, building their own analytic solutions. They can be vertical specific solutions. They could be domain specific. So it might be a, finance or an HR solution. monetization, and that this can be a regular enterprise end user customer who they see value in the data that they have that they create, and they're using Looker to monetize data and deliver analytics to customers, partners, suppliers, and even putting it out in the open market via marketplaces. So just really high level. Elena's going to go a little bit deeper now and talk a little bit about some specific examples with the same sort of backdrop.
Perfect. So Looker is a phenomenal platform for building data experiences, but what does that actually mean to a business, and what does that mean to a customer? So now what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take this technology and turn it into some customer stories for you to really bring it to life. So as we look at this modern BI and analytics experience, we can see that this is powered by interactive dashboards and self-service data exploration. And this is really what our customer Sunrun, hopefully. Come on, there we go. This is what our customer Sunrun really loves about Looker. So what they've done is they centralize all of their data in Google BigQuery, and then with Looker on top, they're able to give that governance, create that trusted understanding of the data. And then what they do is they give it to all the people who need it. So I think their use case here is they have I think like 8 different departments that are all using data and that are all like going and understanding it and going and digging through it with their business expertise hat on, but into that self-service nature of those governed metrics. When we look at integrated insights here, we have this iframe embed anywhere called out, and that's really what Stripe is taking advantage of. What they do is they embed Looker back into their Salesforce instance. And so what that means is that sales reps who spend their days in Salesforce and who shouldn't have to go to another tool, and in all honesty, probably wouldn't go to another tool, have this data that's coming from their product usage data available to them right within Salesforce where they're already working. And so there's just this added context on top of the data that they already have available to them. When we look at data-driven workflows, SalesLoft has built a very, very cool example here. So what they've done is within the Looker modeling layer, they have actually defined what it is that a healthy customer looks like. And within that, they've actually defined it on 6 different key metrics to think about. So are they healthy? Did their health drop because of lack of usage, or did it drop because of number of users, or whatever it may be? And so what they've done is that within Looker, they have that metric, and then if a customer health score drops below a certain threshold, they then take the data on what was the thing that triggered that and push that into their own tool, SalesLoft, in which they've built out these custom campaigns that are, created to email the customers and, encourage them to pick back up the tool or whatever that may be, such that basically they've automated reinvigorating their customers. And this is all done through Looker and with an integration that they built with SalesLoft. And then finally, for custom applications, this is really where you see just how creative companies can be and just how diverse the needs for data are. At this large retail company, what they do is they actually do pricing, but also inventory levels for their different stores with a custom product that they've built in-house that will, let someone know if they're running low on natural peanut butter and make sure that that store gets a shipment of natural peanut butter, and then make sure that it also is merchandised properly and priced properly to the market and to where it is there. So, we've talked through a lot of both the human side and the technology side of this. And I think the last human side of this that we want to touch on is that this is not only a technology problem, and that so much of this actually goes far beyond just better tech. Really what you need is a way to, think about these data projects that is really going to turn around the way that data is perceived at a company and really put those customers those internal or external customers first. So if we think about the success framework for modern data projects, we can see that there's so many different pieces that we need to make sure that we focus on, and not just what is the tool that we're going to use, how are we going to build these pipelines, but also like, are we releasing with the proper cadence? Are we letting people know what's in here? And are we iterating on the things that people are using? Like, do we have a good structure for enabling people to be able to use all of the work that we're building? So I think we end here simply because it's such a large scale opportunity, but because of that, it's a large scale project to really create a data-driven company.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime right in here real quick.
Yeah, please.
Real quick. Yeah, if you would leave this up, and we can put that up in a moment. But and I know Robin wants to ask a couple of questions here, but I guess I'll throw this over to Josh, and then maybe just mute your line, Elena, because there's a bit of background. But what I find so interesting here is that you're giving almost like an insights fabric, right? So we talk about data fabric. That's just bits and pieces, but an insights fabric. And I think particularly about these data-driven workflows, this is the ultimate objective. We've had pieces and parts for years and years. What people need now is to be able to stitch this all together, and as you suggest, create data experiences. And what I'm fascinated by, and I've had a bit of an epiphany right here on the show, is the fact that what Looker is now doing is giving a vantage point into all these different component parts and allowing the business to build custom experiences using not just data, but insights, calculations, analytics, et cetera, weaving that all together. And let's face it, as we move to this truly hybrid cloud world, because that's what we're looking at, multi-cloud, quite frankly, we need ways to reach across these artificial boundaries and build solutions that are going to matter to customers out there. Josh, maybe I'll throw it over to you and Elena to comment on. What do you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's the way I think about it as well. And I think what it does also, is kind of changes the conversation when it comes to BI. A lot of the things that we've seen our customers do are really what I would call art of the possible. Like, and it's pretty powerful when you can, talk to someone about what they think BI means. And a lot of times the conversation gravitates back towards reports and dashboards and how do you do that better and how do you get better looking visualizations. And you could say, well, have you thought of this? Like, have you thought of fill in any one of the data experiences or any examples that we have? And it's sort of eye-opening for people. But your point, I do like the concept of a insight fabric. I think it's a good way to think about it. But that is what enables all the things we've been talking about. And the bits and pieces part, I think, is spot on as well, because you could look at some of this and say, well, we've been doing some of these things forever, but in reality, in practice, you're probably talking about very different teams, segmented teams, using different technology that doesn't really talk to each other. So, I would say the collective value of stitching solutions together really kind of maybe defeats the purpose of doing that, because you introduce things like inconsistencies and discrepancies and risk. Whereas if you can centralize that foundation, like I talked about, and serve up all those different experiences and solve for different use cases and meet different customer needs, all the better, because you eliminate a lot of that risk.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I'm reminding myself of where Looker came from. So just for the benefit of our audience, Looker very cleverly created a language, a sort of meta language that could see across different environments and then return some information back to the user. And this is a trend that we're seeing, quite frankly. Try to leave the data where it lives. Ideally, data does have gravity. We're going to have all these different clouds. We're going to have on-prem. The rumors of on-prem's demise have been greatly exaggerated, in my opinion. So you want to try to leave everything there. But what you guys have done now is really added on top of that. And Robin, I'll maybe just kind of get your take as someone who's been in the industry for many years, to see what Looker has done to transform, to enrich with workflows, with action, with these experiences. So it's no longer just a static report that someone's reading. It's no longer even an interactive visualization. We're talking about connecting all the dots to create that virtuous circle. What are your thoughts, high level, Robin, and then whatever questions you have for Josh and Elena?
Yeah, sure. Well, something conceptual. I mean, Looker's got technology, you know, and let's not ignore the fact that it's been, you know, involved in the data cataloging architectures for a long, long time, and that's the key to some of this, you know. But having said that, one of the things that I'm completely impressed by in terms of what Looker's doing is it's conceptually asking you to start looking at the whole of, let's call it data enrichment, the whole of getting data to the right place at the right time in the right business process, to look at it from different angles. Because yeah, standard BI can solve a lot of problems, right? And that's fine, and you can bolt that in. But the stuff that's actually very powerful, the thing that kind of gladdens my heart, is this particular idea of custom building stuff. A lot of those, you know, graphical capabilities that sit there in the BI tools, you know, they're just goddamn C libraries or C++ libraries that you could actually build in if you were at a programming level. And there was a need, if you like, to get that fine level of granularity to create what I would call the other end of the spectrum for BI, which is custom integration into business processes. You know, taking into account the user as well as the business process to deliver. And I think that they have the right to use customer experience here, because that's what it's about. You know, so that the thing that I think that's different here is, yes, data flow is part of it, the customer experience is part of it, and that's added on top of stuff that we know works, you know. So I like that approach. I don't know if you want to say something about that from Looker's perspective.
Yeah, Josh, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the, it's been one of the, you know, I've been in BI for a long time, and I think it's the lack of action, I would say, or the lack of measurable results from all that investment and all that work, I think has been a frustration for me. And again, we talked about the reasons why that's always been, you know, and there are a lot of companies who are still in that mix, right? They're still trying to figure out, how do I harness the value from, you know, all of my data and all the investment I made in BI? So yeah, I think the you know, the way to change that is to, you know, take, again, that customer focused approach and really make it about, I always think about it in terms of the sort of the decision cycles that people are using. And you know, if you think about like the decisions that you make every day as part of whatever business process you own, what are the analytical processes that you use to make those decisions? And some people would say, well, none. Obviously, that's greenfield, right? That's an opportunity for us to infuse more insights into those decisions. Some may have kind of a partial sort of view of the answer, or using some bits and pieces to make that decision. But how do we make that better? So yeah, and the only way, frankly, I think you can do that is by adopting that customer-centric and user-centric approach to understand the business problem intimately and architect the right solution that aligns to that.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. I mean, I'm interested to the answer to the following question. I mean, obviously you've been engaged with a large number of companies in various different ways. But let's imagine that I'm a company that knows nothing about you, but I've kind of kicked the tires, looked at the technology, done enough investigation for me to figure that, you know, you can kind of fit technologically into what we're doing. And I'm intrigued because I've never taken this flexible approach, developing data delivery to the process, let's call it that, whatever. How would I start with you? Let's assume that, yeah, I'd buy the technology side. How would I start with you culturally? What would you recommend that we do as the first kind of engagement here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think culturally is the right place to start. And I think it starts with doing, you know, almost an inventory or assessment of, you know, how at what stage are you in terms of being data driven as an organization? Because I think the answer there will sort of dictate where you start from a technology perspective. Like I said before, I think most companies are going to say, well, you know, we may think we're data driven, but when you start to peel back the layers and look at what that really means, I think most companies are going to say we have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of areas where we could become more data driven. I think the best thing, the thing I've seen to be most successful with customers and just people who've embarked on this journey is starting small and starting in a targeted way with a very specific use case and go deep on that use case and really understand what the technology can do for you. And by all means, try other solutions. I mean, we encourage, we want people to look at the other options out there and really understand how Looker's different and why we think it's better positioned to meet some of the challenges that we've talked about. But I think the biggest thing for me is just start small with a really clear idea of the problem you're going after. Test it in a real life scenario with real data. All of that, I mean, I think is really good advice early on, and then building on that success. Building on what's the next use case we can go after. Where might there be opportunities to identify greenfield? People who've not really been part of BI at all ever because they just weren't in scope. Are there ways that we can sort of look at new opportunities that have never really been uncovered in the organization? But again, I think that comes later down the line after you've built a little bit of success there. I don't know, Elena, if you had anything else to add.
I think
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Elena.
No, I was going to say that this slide actually comes from our success team, and we've actually spun up a team that is really focusing on driving data culture, because it's such this this vague term that people say that they want but doesn't really mean anything. And so that's certainly been one of the things that we've actually found to drive success with our customers is we have to help them drive both the technical success but also the people success to make it land.
Okay. I have a question. Actually, we could probably go on for an hour or something talking about various nuances of this, but the one that really I kept on thinking about is when you start talking about the semantic layer. And it appears to me, from my experience of the world, certainly, but of course it varies from company to company, that getting the right commitment, the right understanding to what you're doing with the semantic layer and getting buy-in to the semantic layer is a very important thing. And I was just wondering what your experience out there is do you have to do a lot of education to get people to understand what that is, or do they kind of naturally get the idea that in one way or another we have to have a map of what's out there?
Yeah, I can give my thoughts on that. Elena, you can jump in certainly as well. But I think it's the concept. I think people get. The concept of this is the semantic layer is intended to make access to the all the complexity of the underlying data and logic transparent, right, to the end user. So I think they get that. I think there's a little bit of if you think about the industry, it's been around a long time. The semantic layer, that term, has taken on there's a negative connotation associated with it because it's associated with those long cycle times, the complexity, all the things that were inherent with traditional reporting tools that were also built on a semantic layer. So we have a little bit of a re-education, I think, to do, and we do that, I think, pretty successfully with our customers. But that's probably the biggest barrier. I mean, I think the other thing there is, well, okay, how is Looker's approach to a semantic layer different? I think once we can get in and demonstrate it's a collaborative environment where you can have multiple people who really, as long as they know SQL, they can contribute to that semantic layer. There's version control. There's all those things that obviously you need to be able to successfully do that. Once you have that, the value of it is tremendous. And I think it's pretty easy for us to demonstrate that once we can, kind of get into that initial conversation and show people what it means. Reusability of objects. I define something once and I can propagate that through however many processes happen to be referencing it. I think probably the biggest benefit, or the thing that we see the most that is sort of eye-opening for customers, is to say, in a scenario where you say, well, okay, today you're sitting on top of Redshift in AWS as your database. If that changed, what would that mean to your BI layer? And it's sort of I think they envision a lot of work, right, to re-engineer that and to sort of repoint and rebuild on top of some other cloud database. With Looker, because we separate the logic in that semantic layer from the data, that change is nothing, right? You just repoint it, there's no impact. So I think putting in terms of that sort of strategic decision making, where you're saying, well, things are going to change, right? This data world is going to continue to evolve. Your decision, for the BI layer that you're going to put on top, has to think about those things. So I think it's a multifaceted conversation there. But those are the things that I've come across that have been, I think, pretty interesting to customers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'll just kind of chime in. We'll go a little tiny bit long here because we want to dive into this, but there is a question from the audience about that semantic layer as well, and just kind of getting into some more detail. Can you talk about the relationship with catalogs, with Alation, for example, with Calibra? Because it seems to me what you're doing here is very compelling in terms of almost creating a data-driven workbench to address specific business processes, right? And that's really where the last mile has always been so difficult for business intelligence as an industry, is then changing some process. But as Robin suggested, the catalogs are a big part of all that. Can you kind of talk about your APIs quickly and how you interface with catalogs?
Elena, I don't know if Elena's got any. I don't have too much insight there, frankly. I don't know if Elena does on our specific tech partners.
Elena?
Yeah, I think we have customers that use them together. I think it's an interesting, we've taken an interesting approach when compared to them. We had a lot of customers who were asking us for a data dictionary, for something that they could, take all the definitions that they've created in Looker and then, go use that elsewhere. And so we actually created a product. We call it an extension that's within our product that's free for customers that they can download, and that will create that data dictionary for them from all the metadata that they've, tracked and defined within Looker.
I see. Okay. Well, that's good. Okay, we got a number of different, very specific questions. Maybe we can kind of forward these on to you guys to answer after the event. But sure. Long story short, I mean, to me, what I find so compelling, and Robin, maybe you can just comment on this, and then Josh and Elena, some closing thoughts, is that we've really closed the loop here. And you're giving visibility not just into this set of data and that set of data, or this aggregate or that aggregate, but also the workflow and the processes. And that's the last mile. That's where things really get done. So the data experience to the end user, it should be under the hood technology, but to the people who are actually building these solutions, the people who are on the team that develops all this kind of technology, you've given them the infrastructure and the tools to achieve all that. I find that rather compelling. Robin, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, and the problem, I guess, is that BI is itself an empire, in terms of the various pieces that one can put together. But Looker isn't like any other technology set that I'm aware of. If there's something that's like Looker, then I haven't run into it. And it's really the nature of integration is what this is about. I mean, you could say that in terms of being able to display data visually, life hasn't altered that much. We do have nowadays, of course, we have animation and we have real-time visualizations and things like that. But if you just set that aside for one moment, not much has changed. But the difficulty, this 90% that never worked kind of situation with BI, that is really down to integration, not being able to, in one way or another, put an individual next to the user with the technology and produce something that the user discovers to be an excellent tool. And that's been what's missing. And I think Looker makes a big contribution to that in its approach.
Yeah, I'll throw it over to Josh and Elena for closing thoughts.
No, just thanks for the opportunity here to talk about Looker and sort of the BI world. It's definitely one that has we've seen a ton of change and will continue to see change. But I think the things we've talked about today, and really what's been a challenge for companies for a long time is reaching users and again really harnessing the value of their investment. But I do think our approach and sort of what we're after is kind of the key to getting at those users who again have not really been part of the BI equation. It's always been about serving up KPIs to the C-suite. It's always been about serving the analyst or the power user. There's a lot of other people that fall in other categories who we think we can help harness value of data and make better decisions through insights.
Yeah, and really increase the ground game, if you will, of the business world in data-driven ways. Elena, final comments from you?
Yeah, I just say, first off, thank you so much for having us. I think where Looker has really taken this different approach is allowing you to, create this knowledge, basically a digital representation of your company in combining all your data and combining all the metadata about it, and then has tried to give people the tools that they need to go then use that anywhere they want. So it's really all about freeing you to use the data in the way that makes the most impact for your customers and for your company. So it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, thank you guys for coming in. Big thanks to Dr. Robin Bloor. Yes, we do archive all these webinars for later viewing, so we'll have that up fairly shortly. But big days ahead for this industry, folks. I'm very excited because, again, the business can now change things, and this is another very powerful window into how the business operates and how you can deliver data-driven insights and data-driven optimizations. That's what it's really about. You can see some links there to check out what Looker has to offer, and otherwise, we'll catch up to you next week, folks, which I think is the last webinar of 2020. Then we'll bid 2020 farewell, and I think a few people out there agree with me that it's about time. And with that, we'll say thank you so much. We'll catch up to you next time, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.